Great. Okay.
And we are recording with Mr. Basil Bass on Wednesday, December 6th, 2023 at 12:19 p.m. Eastern Time, a day before um Pearl Harbor's tomorrow, correct? December
Yeah.
7th. So all you dirty communists out there, don't forget it, all right? Just because it was in black and white and feels forever ago, those deaths were all just the same. And well, now I feel sacrilegious talking about Pearl Harbor and going into a self promotion. But I mean, it's Fox and Sons coffee, guys. I got it wrong yesterday. I said 10% off. It's 15% off with promo code Tommy. The link to that is in the description. And then you guys all know Dr. McCullough, the company he now works for. It's a supplement company, the wellness company. That's also promo code Tommy, 10% off for all your stuff. The stuff I got banned from YouTube for: turmeric, zinc, quercetin, just mentioning the vitamins that can help you fight COVID. I think that's what led to not me, but starting with those, that's what led to now they're a full-fledged supplement company. So people have already started buying, and you're already slowly starting to support the podcast. But I told Baz, and Baz just said he just started a coffee company. So now it appears that there will be a coffee war. See who can buy for my love. But what's your coffee company?
Yeah. Thanks, Tommy. It's called the Highland Coffee Company, and we got into this after we living up there in the Rockies had a good friend of ours who was brewing coffee, and I'm not a coffee drinker, but I tried this coffee and it was amazing, and I didn't know why it was amazing because after I tried it, I went around and tested it throughout the country, and it was all crap coffee. So what's interesting is we're roasting at altitude or at elevation, if you want to say one or the other. And because of the way we're roasting this, it retains all of its oils and all of its flavors. So that nasty acidic flavor that makes you think, where did they buy those beans from under the truck tire in Africa or something? You don't get that kind of stuff here. So interesting enough, we all of a sudden realized we were brewing and roasting better coffee than anybody in America. And people go, well, you can't say that. Well, I'm not a coffee drinker, and I'm telling you, it's great coffee. And we haven't had one person that's tasted the coffee that said, where did this come from? So obviously, we're not going to give away our trade secret. And of course, at the same time, it's no secret that we're roasting at altitude. And anybody else who probably would get up to 8,500 feet and roast might get the same result. But there's not a lot of places that are 8,500 feet in America except for the Rockies. So anyway, with that in mind, on top of realizing we're roasting something that was unique, we had a lot of people who have some Scottish and Irish heritage in their life, probably like Carrigans. And we said, wow, this is as good as it gets in the Highlands. So it ended up becoming a Highland Coffee Company. But the great thing about it was this, is that when the owners of the company came together, and I just happened to end up being one of them, uh, we agreed that a percentage of every sale would go to the Association for Recovery of Children for operations. So now for us, it's great. Every time someone, you know, purchases coffee, a percentage of that sale goes. So we tell people, and we don't have to sell the coffee because of ARC, but we do bring it into perspective by saying, look, you know, trafficking is such a common term nowadays that nobody hardly even blinks an eye when I mention it. So let me tell people what it really is. Trafficking of children is paid child rape. That's what it is. It's a 7-year-old girl chained to the floor, cigarette burns all over her body, not fed in days, but raped 15 times a day by male and female perpetrators with STDs and trauma that will last for a lifetime. So the question is, who will save that child? And I tell people, you will. And you will, because you will become a strategic partner with us when you purchase that coffee. Because it will go directly into operations. And as you know, none of us get a paycheck. This is not even to give us a paycheck. We all do something else. My second in command runs a YMCA, and I've got people doing that's the way we do it. We've never done it. We've never done it with a salary. We weren't called to this as a business model in 1993, and now the longest running child rescue organization in America. We were called to it because it's the right thing to do. So with all that in mind, we always try to be a little more creative on how can we get more money for operations so that we can go rescue more kids. And this kind of came up, and it was like, okay, we're going to do this. And besides, it's fun. And besides, when I get to be 98 years old and maybe I end up retiring, it'll be easy for me to roast coffee or something like that. So that's how it came about. We'll try to win you over with it. We'll try to win America over with it. But anyway, it is really delicious coffee. So thank you, Tommy.
Of course, and for anyone listening, that as much as you may not believe me, that legitimately wasn't planned. I know that sounds like a like a bullshit, like, hey Baz, tell me about your. It really wasn't. Also, your audio, it's getting quiet at random times. So anyone listening, I am aware of it. I'll try to edit it after. And Baz is gonna get a brand spanking new microphone. So I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's Zoom. I wouldn't necessarily say it's you. It might be you. I don't know. But
Tommy, stand by.
okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I'll vamp. So, but what Baz said is about what trafficking is I think Baz is taking a phone call for everybody listening. It's important what he did just say, and what it is it's paid child rape, because whether intentionally or not, consciously or subconsciously, I'm guilty of it. I never call my well, now I am, but I never call my brother's suicide as suicide. I just say, I say John. I never call it his suicide. I say, with the whole John thing. And I don't even mean to, but it's a subconscious thing we do. We kind of, when you have a blister on your foot, whether you pay attention or not, you baby it, you favor it. And so oftentimes it's simple to say 9/11. Oh, let's say tomorrow, Pearl Harbor. It's easy to go, yeah, Pearl Harbor. And it's like, no, let's remember what it was. Is I always remember a documentary I watched where it's this old guy tearing up. And this is like 20 years ago, and he was an old guy, and he was talking about how his best friend had fallen into the water and the surface was covered with oil and was on fire. And he came up and he was reaching for his friend, and he reached down and he grabbed his bicep and he pulled the skin off his entire arm, and his friend sunk down. And that's what Pearl Harbor was. And 9/11 wasn't 9/11. It was a bunch of soccer moms jumping to their death and exploding on the pavement because they didn't want to be burned alive. So it is important, not all the time. I understand we don't necessarily want, to talk about trauma in every day of our lives, but trafficking, and it's not something like the Nazis where it's like, the night of long knives, where they call it something. No one's meaning to do that, but let's remember what trafficking is. And it's what Baz just said. And if it makes you wince and makes you feel a little uncomfortable, it should. Trafficking is paid child rape. It's kindergartners getting raped. There's don't dance around it. That is what it is. So that is kind of an important thing. And I often try to just remind people, like, that is what it is. It's war isn't just, they went over there and served. No, they went over there and got permanent mental trauma and their friends got blown up. Like, and I get, I don't want to be that guy at the lunch table who's like, by the way, trafficking's child rape. Like, I get it. Like, by all means, enjoy your day. But every once in a while, remember what it is. Baz isn't just, it's Baz, the veteran with the American flag, and he fights trafficking. No, remember what it is. Baz is rescuing children from getting brutally gang raped by adults. That's just what it is. So that, I don't even know if this was our topic for today. I think we were going to talk about the Canada car bomb, but when you said it's paid child rape, it kind of made me irk a little bit, and then I realized, well, that it should. That's what it is, right? It's that's when you go to the doctor, he doesn't say, all right, well, yeah, your heart's working overtime. He says, Mr. Carrigan, you're wildly overweight and you need to stop smoking or you're going to drop dead and your kids are going to, cry when you're lowered into the ground. That's the kind of thing where you go, oh shit. Right. So, not to immediately pull a dark cloud over this show, but again, that is what it is though. Right. It is what it is. So, that is what ARC is. And the link to that is in the description. Baz and I have done episodes about it before. You guys know Rick Prado. I've had him on here before, and I believe he's on the board if I'm not correct. And his book Black Ops is badass. Yes. So you have the most badass guys CIA ground branch, working to alleviate the most possible evil. And even though I don't work for Bass, and I didn't know he had a coffee company until 5 minutes ago, that's what you're helping when you go buy a bag of coffee. Is you're helping fight. You don't have to do a thing. You can be a fat lazy bitch like me. Go buy a cup of coffee and give some money to the angels fighting the demons. So I don't really. That wasn't the topic of this show, but an important aside. And I'll just hand it over to you as I realize I'm immediately taking the show off into the weeds.
No, it's great. I didn't expect that either, but thank you for asking about it. And it's the upside, the fun side of kind of what we do. I hate to put it that way. You know, you don't get a lot of reprieve from this. Trafficking is 24/7 for us, but I think you know me well enough, Tommy, as a lot of people have for the years, that we're very, very transparent and we're really straight shooters. I'm very much that guy that just says, this is what it is, and what are you going to do about it? I realize that it's ugly, and I realize that a lot of people can't handle the issue. A lot of people don't want to handle the issue. A lot of people are inundated with other things that are happening in the country. So I don't fault anybody for not getting involved. What I tell them is, if in fact you don't get involved and it lands on your doorstep, which it will, then maybe you'll regret that. Because what's happening with the child sex trafficking issue, particularly now with the open border situation for years, is it has given the cartel, excuse me, a bigger foothold in America. And in 2017, it was a $32 billion industry in this country. Worldwide now, I believe it's $150 billion, which means that a lot of people that traffic drugs are getting out of drug trafficking. They're getting into child sex trafficking because it's more lucrative. And also, and I'm probably, this is that part that you and I always talk about, where I'm sure the FBI is going to come knock on my door eventually, and yours too. But things like this administration being directly involved in the trafficking of children is no longer a conspiracy. It's not. It's the God's honest truth. And I only know that because many of us are on the border. We've watched this unveil itself. And when you look at things like now, where more than 36, I think, Republican senators have called on Biden's administration to counsel a Department of Health and Human Services proposal to get this, that would allow the government to stop vetting certain adults who apply to take custody of unaccompanied immigrant children. Go figure, what's up with that? 39 GOP senators, God bless them, led by one of my favorite senators, Chuck Grassley of Iowa, of course. They sent HHS an official letter Monday, I think, which they threatened to overturn a proposed rule by Congressional Review Act legislation that was alleging that it would wipe out the screening process for adults seeking to take children who come over the border alone. Are we insane? No, we're not insane. People go, well, is this an accident? No, people got to wake up and, no pun intended, smell the coffee. This is by design. This is a huge business model, the trafficking of children. The fact that my good friend Tara Rhodes, announced that we've had 86,000 illegal immigrant children that the government cannot account for. Where are those kids? Well, where could they be? They could be in child pornography. They could be in satanic cults. They could be in people's basements. They could be in warehouses. They could be being used for organ harvesting, sex, child pornography, and the list goes on and on and on. And this is on our country. America is the largest buyer globally, the largest buyer of child sex. That's disgusting. And because we have a broken judicial system, and on top of that, we have an administration in place now that is fueling the fire. No one's asking the question, why aren't they fueling the fire? And the answer to that is because somebody is making money. Somebody's profiting off of these children. Other than that, people like yourself and most Americans is like, why are we not protecting children? They're innocent. They're innocent. And yet this administration refuses to answer those questions, because I believe, from my 30 plus years of experience experience in the trenches rescuing children, that they are complicit in the crime. And if I turn out to be right, I pray God Almighty strikes them dead. I pray we get a DOJ that puts every one of them in prison for the rest of their life for what they're doing to children, and in turn, what they're doing to America and its reputation around the world. I'll get off my high horse. There you go.
No. It's there's a great book by Nick Bryant, who was a I think like a veteran BBC reporter. And I know in the last couple of years, any idea of like an esteemed media name doesn't mean shit. But he wrote the book The Franklin Scandal, which is I
Yeah.
think takes place in the you probably know about in the I think it's the 80s, but it's it was a state I think it was a
Nebraska, right?
was it? Yeah, it was because
Nebraska.
it was based around a bank called the Franklin Credit Union, and that's where there was a guy named Lawrence King, not Larry King, not the host, but Lawrence King, and he was a I think it was state congressman, or it was pretty low level, but it was Republicans, and it was Republicans that like were closeted, I guess, gay guys or really pedophiles, and it was the moving around of kids as the idea of blackmail decades before the idea of the Epstein client list and the meme of Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Like that is real, and so not only is that very well documented, it's a long, dense book. I went through it. I wanted to. I did. It's a long, dense book, but in there as well is, I mean, these kids talking about like satanic rituals. We've done shows on it. I've had on people from Safe. You did an episode with I cannot remember her name from Safe House.
Yeah. Christy Wells.
Christy, well, of course, perfect. We've talked about it before, and I don't want to go into it, but like some people roll their eyes when you go child trafficking as a means of blackmail. Other people are more receptive to it, but then those receptive people shut it down when you go, some people are in satanic. Man, it's as real as it gets, and there's a lot of people poisoning the well, and they're lizards. No, not that, but man, it is. I saw a quote the other day, and it was somebody quoting a deacon at whatever military school they went to 50 years ago. He's like, I'll always remember something. You cannot fathom the depths of Satan. And that one really stuck with me because I always thought I had an idea of evil, but I think that's just like you cannot fathom the the unbridled love of God. Conversely, you cannot fathom the depths of Satan. So again, don't listen to Baz and myself yelling. And don't bite the Epstein meme of he didn't kill himself and we're at the client list, and then you just go back to whatever. Go read The Franklin Scandal by Nick Bryant. And I keep pushing that because it is such a dense book. It's not exciting. There's no plot. It's just court case and file and grand jury, just again and again. It's photographers, it's mysterious deaths. It's just all laid out, and just absolutely traumatized children who either killed themselves, ended up addicted to drugs, or just completely broken people. It's about as surgical of a review as you can get. So, I mean, that is what it is. It's real. It's not fantastical. It's real. The kids don't go, and this is the point I was going to make. Yeah. If something's happening and you wonder, how does this keep happening? How does, the government is complicit. That doesn't mean the entire government's one group of people and that they're all responsible for everything. But, when you don't know where $100 billion goes to Ukraine, but they know where your $600 Venmo transfer went, it's because of that. When they do $2 billion of damage in the summer of 2020 and riot and destroy and kill police officers and nothing happens, but they hunt down an old lady who walked through the Capitol with an American flag, they're capable and they're watching. They can do this. When the NSA can pick up chatter on a cell phone in the middle of Pakistan, they can also pick up, some creepy comments in a Reddit thread. So then why is it happening? It's happening because it's complicity. It's just what it is. And so, as Nick Bryant said in an interview, he said, I don't know if he goes, I don't think I'll fix it in my lifetime, but the very first thing you do with a problem is bring it to light and diagnose it. Just like when you go to AA, I have a problem. The first thing you do is that. He's like, we'll get to the next steps later. But that is the most important thing, is to put it out there. It is what it is. And we'll take the next step when we get there. So I'll stop. I've been ranting nonstop this episode, Baz. I
No,
apologize.
it's all the truth, and it's all good, and people need to hear it. We are living in broken times. I saw President Trump's interview last night with Sean Hannity, and one of the interesting things that he either alluded to or mentioned, is what we have with corrupt judges. And I think that when he gets back in, he's going to fix that, and I think that's why people fear him, because he, way back when he said, "I'm going to drain the swamp," that swamp was thicker than we ever knew it was. He knew, others knew. Um, and but interesting, I hope America realizes, and I think President Trump hopefully would agree with me on this, because he's always saying, "I'm fighting for you, fighting for America." It's interesting that although he is the tip of the spear, so to speak, that spear cannot be thrust into evil's side unless the American people are pushing it that way. It cannot. And the American people have got to remember that all of these people in authority work for us, we the people. And we've lost sight of that. We've allowed evil to grow and scare us into thinking that we have lost our power and our liberty. And I'm here to remind people, as you do every day, Tommy, that that is not the case. You have to fight and be willing to die for your liberty and your freedoms. And you have to put evil in its place. That's what the 3% of the colonists did in this country. They said, "Enough's enough." They said, we will fall where we stand. We will not retreat. We know the difference between good and evil. And this is what I encourage all Americans to do, is take their rightful place per the Constitution, per the history of our founding fathers, and do not be afraid. Do not back off. If people aren't doing their job, if people aren't being held accountable for the crimes they're committing, like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, releasing 7,000 plus child, sex offenders back into the streets. How come he's not being held accountable for the crimes that they're recommitting? How come he's not in prison? If it's on his watch, if he has the authority to do that, how come the American people in California aren't stringing him up right now? How come? There's a lot of how comes. And so, as you and I have discussed in the past, we have got a place in America where we believe that if we uncover something, something's being done about it. There's somebody being held accountable. But that's not the case. The media, the socialist, left-wing, Democratic-controlled media, has managed to soften everything and will make people believe that something is being done, but nobody's going to jail for it. At least, none of the bad people are going to jail for it. People that are being targeted by, sadly, politicized law enforcement agencies are the Catholics, are the parents, or are the January 6th people that they keep saying was an insurrection. My gosh, what a bunch of baloney. Any special operations guy, warfighter, laughs at that when we hear that, because we know what insurrections really are. And they don't have, and yet they have managed to, excuse me, they have managed to pull off what at one time only the Soviet Union could have pulled off, which was incarcerating people without evidence, incarcerating people to send a message to the rest of the population that you cannot do this or cannot do that, that you do not have a voice as an American. And yet we are standing by and allowing it to happen. So the question is, what are we going to do about that? And I always encourage Americans also, do what your founding fathers did. Stand on the Constitution, stand on their words. Is somebody going to be bold enough to say Thomas Jefferson said this, but he was all wrong? George Washington did this, but he was all wrong. That was the founding of this nation. So walk in their footprints, use their words, because those words are almost eternal and they still apply to us today. We don't have to find new words. We don't have to find new actions. They did it for us. They sacrificed for us. Be willing to sacrifice as they did, but just use the same blueprint. That's all we got to do. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And on, maybe that's not the path you want to take. I would say if you have a child, just understand that it could be yours. So that's what drives me to try to be so open about mental health and suicide, is because I lost a brother. I have all the memories and just funerals and services and just a decade of just unimaginable pain and echoes of just savage sorrow. And that's what always reminds me that sometimes I don't want to do episodes about mental health. It's because it hurts. Sometimes I'm just like bored of the topic, but I'm always like, that's somebody's John. That's, you know, that's somebody's, the background on my phone is, I'm not going to show it, but I mean, it's a picture I found of like, my brother when he was younger. And I found that yesterday, and it's just still right in the stomach. And like, so at the very least, just base it on that. You can take the Constitution route, but you don't need to know history. You don't even need to understand the human language, the English language. What would you do if that was your child? And it is that simple. And we're now going to attempt the impossible to somehow tie this into what thumbnail I made, but maybe we can in terms of government complicity, and you're not going to get a masterclass in bullshitting and bending the conversation in terms of government complicity. And if something happens and you don't understand why it's happening, it's because it's being allowed to happen. We have, not yesterday, but I believe the night before, that explosion in the house outside of DC, which was caught on camera, gas leak, flare, whatever, being raided by a SWAT team, and a lot of questions of who the guy was. And then just before Thanksgiving break, was the bomb at the Canada American border. So in that sense, we have two explosions, both of which law enforcement are present for, and both of which don't entirely add up. So what can you speak about on that? And for people wondering why we didn't do this episode the day of, it happened and Baz called me and left a voicemail, but it was the first day of my vacation and I was already about 8 beers deep. And I was like, this is going to look really bad if I try to do a podcast right now. So that's the reason why we're doing this, 14 days later. But can you maybe elaborate on what exactly did happen at the Canadian border?
I think the best place to start is saying, what is everybody aware of? Well, we're aware that there was an explosion at the Canadian-U.S. border by, what do we want to call him? We want to call him a terrorist? Do we want to, what was he attempting to do? I'm not part of the investigation, but it follows in the same footprints of every other suicide bomber that we've dealt with, my gosh, in my career, last 40 years or so. We've spoken about this, Tommy, over the course of the last 3 years when it comes to the border being a national security issue. And the media keeps either ignoring that or making it about something else, a little bit about something else, a little bit about immigrants, a little bit about these people are in need, a little bit about maybe trafficking, maybe a little bit about the drugs, but never focusing on the bigger picture, which is a national security issue, which is a President Biden and an administration that has failed to secure an opening in our country that will and probably has allowed terrorists enter this country freely from Syria, Afghanistan, China, and the list goes on and on and on. The Border Patrol knows that. That is delinquency of duty. That is directly putting the American people in harm's way. That is punishable and should be punishable for treason, for turning your back on the American people, for putting them in danger, because it does not take a rocket scientist to realize that terrorists will enter this country and have tried for many, many years. We've seen it when they're given an opportunity to do that. And so speaking boldly, and as a former counterterrorism officer, what this administration did, and I want the American people to be very clear about this, what this current administration did was open up a door for Americans to be killed. This is on their watch, and they did not move efficiently and refuse to lock that border up, which means I believe they're complicit in that as well. With that in mind, what you saw in the Canadian border is just an example of what's going to happen here in America. Was it a proof of concept operation? Possibly. Are there more terrorist cells in America now? based on my years of experience, absolutely. I believe the FBI would agree with that. The CIA would agree with that. I think local law enforcement will agree with that. Here's the danger in all of it. And I remember speaking just months ago about to a law enforcement officer, a chief of police, excuse me, about the bigger footprint, the fact that he agreed also terrorist cells were probably here in America. And I asked him, I said, do you have RPGs at your station that you can use? And he said, absolutely not. I said, so if it's MS-13, if it's the cartel, if it is a cell from the Taliban, if it is any terrorist organization that was schooled and trained in Syria, if it is part of ISIS, how well do you think you can stand up against that in a firefight? And he just looked at me and shook my head and said, we're not prepared for that. We're not prepared for that. Is it possible? I remember talking about this 15 years ago in America, that there would become a time when enough cells built up in this country that what terrorist organizations, well-organized terrorist units could do, and it is actually possible, they could literally put a car bomb in every city and detonate everything at one time and make 9/11 look like child's play. And they could do that over and over for months to come. They could take the first suicide bomber with the suicide vest and walk into a school and blow up and kill 50 kids in an auditorium. There was a time when that wasn't that possible because we hadn't allowed that opportunity in this country. But this administration has allowed that opportunity. And now the best we can do is wait to see how it plays out in the next 5 to 10 years. But even when it does play out, and I predict it will play itself out, who is going to be held accountable for that? Is the DOJ going to go back and put the vice president and the president in prison? Is it going to put the head of security for this country in prison? Who was supposed to be controlling the border in prison? Are they going to do that? No. They will probably just go on and finish their lives because there's no accountability. And the American people will have to deal with that. Now, if you add to the fact that American people are being pressured every day to take their guns away, how will they defend themselves? Because the police won't be able to do it. So what America is going to have to do is get a good community policing program in every city and every town across America so that you have more eyes and ears on target, just like they do in Israel. What are we looking for? What do we know? That looks suspicious. Let's get together, whether it's our community, whether it's our police department, whether it's our military, whatever it's going to be. Excuse me. That's how you're going to defend against it, because terrorist organizations will make the same impact in America with the media by just this small town USA and detonating a bomb or assassinating somebody. They don't have to do it in New York City. They can find all these little towns that are just sitting there, not prepared, with a police department that has 5 officers, perhaps, detonate a car bomb in a school, at the fire department, at the grocery store, and make the same impact they could as if they went downtown Atlanta, Georgia, and did the same thing down there, because they'll get coverage. And then we will start running in fear. And then we will be playing catch up. And then we will be starting to look like Mexico and Damascus and everywhere else around the world. And that, sir, is by design, because anyone with common sense, anybody that cares for this country, would have closed that border a long time ago, but they did not. So much to your point about them being complicit, I believe that most Americans are at this stage where they're saying there is no common sense reason for doing this unless you are complicit in the crime. And it always goes back to this: follow the money, you'll find the crime. Who's on whose payroll? Who has alliances with ISIS, and with terrorists, and with globalists, and with all the other people around America, around the world, that want to see America destroyed? They want to see our democracy destroyed. They want to cause infighting. Hey, you know what? I'm going to tell America right now. Let me tell you what, all this bunch of baloney and BS about racism, that we just went through with Antifa and BLM and everybody else and all this other bunch of malarkey that's out there, you think that's an issue? You wait until somebody puts a car bomb and blows up people, and that those people that died were Mexican, black, Asian descent, whatever. Then what are you going to do? Is the narrative going to be, oh, they killed these people because these terrorists are racist? It doesn't work that way. We've been arguing about the silliest stuff in the world. And you and I've had this conversation, where I sit with my Black American friends that I've been in the trenches with. We all bleed the same color. We know that. We don't have that problem. And they'll look at me and go, don't call me an African American. I wasn't in Africa. I'm an American. That's it. Or my buddy whose, parents came from Japan. I'm not an Asian American. I'm an American. Yes, it's true. I have Asian DNA, but I'm an American. That's what I want to be. I don't want you part and parceling me so that my allegiance. I don't have an allegiance to Japan. I don't have an allegiance to Ireland. I don't have an allegiance to Africa. My allegiance is to the United States of America. This is where I was born. This is what I will fight for, and this is where I will be buried. That seems to only come about when we have something like we had in 9/11. Outside of the people that were dancing on the rooftops that believed that 9/11 was a good thing, and those people should have been kicked out of this country immediately. And the same thing, anybody that burns the American flag ought to be kicked out of this country immediately. I'm really hard about that stuff, not just because I'm a veteran, but a lot of people in this country died for this country and for that flag and for what it stands for. But outside of those people, the only time we see some kind of unification is when we're all scared, all running around like chickens with our head cut off because, oh my gosh, there's something happening to us. It could happen to me. How about it could happen to America? How about America as a whole? How about quit being so selfish about your little town or your little city? And remember that we all live in the United States of America. And what's best for the United States of America? I'll tell you what's best for the United States of America is making sure this doesn't happen to us in this. We don't live like Mexico, and we don't live like Syria, that we don't live like Ethiopia or whatever it may be. But sadly, Tommy, I think Americans have to be prepared for that because it is coming. I've been, in my day as a counselor and a guy that's been hired by governments and institutions to do predictability studies and threat assessments. I haven't been wrong in 40 years, and that doesn't make me special. There's a lot of guys just like me, and they will agree. The methodology that we use to predict the outcome of things is pretty solid. And I would say, excuse me, that what I'm talking about right now is going to happen. I mean, that's why, I don't know, over 40 years ago, Gunny Hartzell and myself wrote the Terrorism Survival Handbook for Families. And people laughed at us like, for families, why do families need it? It's like, because families are going to be the target, because families make up America. It's the family unit that's the platform for our country, which is another problem we deal with in our country, of course, as you know, is that our families are falling apart. Outside of the spiritual component of that, people don't even know how to keep a family together these days and everything. So because of that, from the ground level up, America's falling apart at the upper levels and stuff. So anyway, I think that America needs to be prepared, and not a threat, not out of fear, but understand what somebody has just done to you. And if you're okay with that, if you're okay by this administration screwing you over so that there is a threat of terrorism on your doorstep, so be it. So be it. But for many of us in America, we are not okay with it. We are not okay with it. We're not happy about it. And we are making a large statement as we the people that somebody should be held responsible for that. We consider it treason, to be honest with you.
And because Baz is a gentleman and a scholar, speaking of coffee, I drink a ton of coffee. I have to go to the bathroom, but I want to come back and touch on the car bomb thing because that's actually one of the first topics, ironically enough, I ever got on with the podcast, and sort of about that style of terrorist attack, and then what may or may not come from it. But Baz is gonna tell you about ARC for 60 seconds, and I'll be right back.
Thanks, Tommy. So, as many of you know, I am the founder of the Association for the Recovery of Children. We started in 1993 during an event that many of you may know about called Black Hawk Down in Mogadishu, Somalia, during the Civil War. And it was during that time that myself, along with a number of other special operations operators, rescued a couple of little girls that were displaced and abandoned by a father from another country. And when I got back to the United States, I discovered that there were 250,000 children missing and considered by law enforcement to be runaways here in America. There were jurisdictional issues, there were financial issues, there were communication issues, and a lot of red tape that prevented a lot of local, state, and federal law enforcement officers from actually going out and doing anything about this. And so most of the children were just written off, as I said, as runaways. But I discovered that not to be the case. And it tugged on my heart for a long time, to the point that I finally, by 1996, resigned from the CIA and started the Association for the Recovery of Children to do something that I believe needed to be done, but was not being done by the federal government. So the Association for the Recovery of Children is a 501c3 nonprofit organization of former intelligence, military, and law enforcement officers who are dedicated to the recovery of missing, exploited, and sex trafficked American children. Once local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies have exhausted all their efforts, or they choose not to get involved, we engage. We do this at no cost to the custodial guardian and with no paycheck in our pocket. And so thus far, we've been blessed to have 100% success rate in that every child we've gone after, we have brought home. Much to our surprise, there have been a number of other NGOs, non-government organizations, involved in aftercare, and a handful actually of other organizations that go out with boots on the ground like ourselves to actually go into the evil and bring these children out. While I would like to say that the hundreds that are out there can do the job, we actually only operate with 5 out of all of those hundreds in America that actually go out and rescue kids, because they have a proven track record, because they toe the line, because they're accountable for their actions. So anyway, that's who we are. And with your donations, which we're grateful for, we will continue to force multiply and bring more people on board to go rescue more children. Last year in America, 400,000 plus American children were considered this. We don't see 400,000 plus American children walking the streets. So the question is, where are they, and what's being done to them? Child sex trafficking will not end in our lifetime. And any organization that tells you that they will stop trafficking has not been in the trenches long enough to know the difference. But what we can do is be responsible on our watch and rescue every single kid we can get our hands on. And then hopefully, when we are further down the road, and we are not out in the field operating, we have trained up enough people to continue this so that children that come generations after us will have the hope that they no longer have to live in a world of brokenness and abuse. So there you have it, Tommy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you said it once. You can't find them all. You can't rescue them all. And that seems kind of makes you feel hopeless. And what's the point? And then you thought, or then you said, but to the one child that was rescued, I mean, what? It's them. It's their life, which it's their life, right? It's like, it's if I was rescued, I'd be like, I understand what you're saying, Baz. There's a lot of people, you know, you're not going to get them all, but like, I have a great life now. And so it's not nothing. And the website for that, the recoveryofchildren.org, is in the description, as well as your website, bazzelbaz.com, bazzel-baz.com. But concerning that's, I don't know why it was, but it's something early on in the podcast. I just, there's an idea I was tossing around in my head forever about car bombs in the United States, or that general idea. And the best conclusion I could ever come to was, a military strike is something that happens all at once, regardless of, fear you can put into a population. That might be a bonus. It might not, but you want to go hit something, right? You hit it with a JDAM, you go cut the power, flashbang, Delta goes in, right? And 9/11, right? I mean, two towers, Pentagon. They're in there aiming for the Capitol. Boom, boom, boom. Well funded, coordinated attack. Get it done. If you wanted terror, you'd see something like Israel, October 7th. You'd see them broadcasting it. And if you wanted to slowly just wear on the nerves of the United States, I always thought you wouldn't do a 9/11. You would do, well, I mean, regardless if you said car bombs all at once, forget all at once, just every day. But Manhattan, Times Square? No, what about, I went to school in Valdosta, Georgia. Valdosta, Georgia. What if a car bomb went off at Valdosta, Georgia? You'd be like, what the hell? And then another one went off in middle of Montana at a gas station. And then one went off in downtown Chicago. And then none went off for 3 days. And then three went off in one day. The general just baseline, like, holy shit, I need a Xanax, would rise so high that you would wear down the population probably more effectively than 9/11. And so then you have to wonder, okay, that would be the motive of a terrorist organization. But let's just play with this idea of speculation. If you wanted to enact something that made COVID lockdowns look trivial, you would want people, right? It's right out of the Soviet handbook. You total chaos, total hyper normalization, nothing's real, there is no truth, and just nonstop pain and agony and death. They will be begging for a strong arm to come in. That's when the tanks roll in. That's when you have the control system. And you gotta wonder, do you have an open border and you just let these things in and you just let them happen, and then we'll be begging for National Guard checkpoints at every cul-de-sac? And to think that it can't happen, I'm not saying it will, we're just toying with this idea. If you ever thought you'd see COVID and what happened with COVID and the lockdowns, the draconian lockdowns, you ever thought you'd see that in your lifetime outside of a paranoid film? It happened. And we're sliding out of it now and it's just in the rearview mirror, but that happened, man. Came out of nowhere. It was like a flash flood. And why can't that happen again? That was a virus that most people survived. Okay, what about car bombs that most Americans will survive? I'm in Portland, Maine. What if just boom, there goes the holy shit? And then how do you wear on people to start being like, you know what, man? We got to be careful. I don't want to lose liberties, but I mean, goddamn, get some MRAPs in there. At a certain point, your base human, and it's not a fault of you're a human. At a certain point, you have people begging for it to come in, and so you have to wonder, how would tyranny come to a place like the United States? It wouldn't be a strong arm coming out of nowhere. The people themselves would be begging for it, and that's you don't need car bombs simultaneously in every city. You need one person with a backpack of tannerite or a propane tank. Anywhere. You choose a library in the middle of fucking Arkansas, and then you hit downtown LA, and then you hit a cabin in Oregon. That's what you would do, and you would do it day in and day out.
Yeah.
For years, you would wear people down.
You would. Mike Flynn, General Flynn, a lot of people know him, love him to death. Mike and I have managed to become friends, and Mike, forgive me if I you on this. He said, the ways that we deal with issues in America, we either have a solution for it, or now we just have to manage it, because it's the border. We had a solution. President Trump did close it. That's it. The Biden administration chose not to. Now we're at a point where we're having to manage stuff. And you're right. And so when people go, well, a lot of good Americans would not. We don't have a lot of terrorists in America that would do what Tommy's talking about, put a car bomb here or backpack bomb here or whatever it may be. But what about this? What if I'm you guys, a fair-skinned, appear to be Caucasian. Thank goodness I have a little Native American in me from my grandmother, but it doesn't show. I don't have any feathers or anything. I don't know what happened there, but anyway. But what if I speak perfect English? And what if I don't look Middle Eastern? And what if under a false flag recruitment scenario, come to Tommy or somebody, not Tommy, let's just use average American Joe that lives in small town USA. And I have a chance encounter, we become friends, and over the course of 6 months, I convince him that something needs to be done in order to cause change in America. Because let's say I say this group of people are really bad people and they do this and this and this. And I spread a lot of propaganda, and I basically brainwashed this guy. For the sake of America, we need to do this. We need to strap a bomb on you, and you need to walk into that library, because that's going to send a message to the government that we're fed up with what you're doing with taxation or whatever it may be. And this guy buys into it. And one day he goes and does that. And a year later, we find out that the guy who recruited him was actually a member of ISIS. And they have another agenda. They did a false flag recruitment. They got this guy to do exactly what they wanted to do: create terror in the hearts of men and women throughout America. What if they are able to do false flag recruitments all across America? And then these things start happening. And the people that are doing them think they're doing it for one reason. The members of ISIS know it's for another reason. And they're creating havoc, and they're destabilizing local, state, federal governments, because no one can get their hands on it, and because no one can manage the crisis. That's exactly what you're talking about right there. So I don't believe a good red-blooded American, so to speak, would ever do anything like that in his country, unless, of course, he was influenced by something else that convinced him, or someone else that convinced him that he needed to do it for whatever reason. His ideology, what he believed in, whatever it may be. Now, that's just one part of it. But if we want to go into far left field, Tommy, and get into all the quantum stuff about signaling and how they're scaffolding the brain now, and how you can send signals to people and make them do things. And when you hear people go, I hear a voice in my head, that's all real deal. That's not movies anymore. We know the science behind that, So what if you inject someone and now you're building scaffolding around their brain? And now through 5G or whatever it is, you're sending them the messages that you want in order for them to be motivated to do what you want. Is that possible? Absolutely, it's possible. Every time we have one of these shooters, these random shooters, and particularly if it's a kid, we always look back and go, look at the games, look at the video games that he was watching, Call of Duty or all these kill games. And then he becomes so desensitized that he acts it out in real life. But what if it was more than that? What if somebody actually got to a lot of people in America? And I know now when I say this, people are going to go, oh, Baj, you've really lost it. Oh my gosh. So, but what if, let's just say what if we got to 12 people in America, 12 kids, and we injected them with whatever we wanted to inject them with, or we influenced them, whatever. We built scaffolding, we brainwashed them, we made them believe something that otherwise they would never believe. And at the right moment, we made sure they had access to weapons. And at the right moment, we signaled them to go in and shoot up a school. For the sole purpose of one thing, sole purpose of fulfilling an agenda to get rid of weapons from the American people. To scare people to believe that weapons are bad. And we know that's not the case. Guns don't kill people. People with guns kill people. And if they don't have guns, they'll use machetes, or they'll use bombs, or they'll use pitchforks, or they'll use rocks. The issue is why are they killing each other? Why is America so desensitized to human life? Well, I don't know, because we run around killing our unborn babies, and that's normal for us. So the death of a child, of a human being, doesn't mean anything to us. It's not sacred anymore. Could be. Could it be what we're programming people with? Could be. Does programming really exist? Absolutely. As a former CIA officer, I can tell you it does. As a member of the Hollywood culture, so to speak, yes, it absolutely does. What we feed people, what they digest mentally, influences their lives. We know that exactly. So these are things that 20 years ago we would have talked about, and it would have been like, conspiracy. It would have been like otherworldly, so to speak. But now these are all possibilities. And when I'm in a think tank and we're doing threat assessments and predictability studies, these are things we talk about. What if this? Could this be? Could this be? And what we're coming to understand is that it is possible. It is possible. So much to what you're saying about disrupting America by having these little things happen all of America for 5, 10, 15 years. Will it wear us down? It absolutely will wear us down because we won't be able to control it. And much like a prairie fire, once you light that one match and the winds get up, man, it goes. It's going to burn all across America. And that, I think that you and I may be on the same sheet of music with, because I think that when that happens, we're going to have our hands full in the country. And I do not think that the federal government will be able to handle it all. I think the people at the local and state level, the attorney generals, I think they're going to have to be prepared for this and what actions they will take. But with that said, part of that process may include just now we have roadblocks. Now we have the military inspecting every car for the right reasons. But now all your freedoms are being taken away because we know there is error in humanity. So now you get to a checkpoint where you've got the wrong guys at the checkpoint. And now your wife and your daughters, like in the Ukraine, just like in every war, just like in every high threat area, on this given day, they pull your wife out and they rape her at the checkpoint because it's a bad group of guys. They're in uniform, bad group of guys. We just had here in Loveland, Colorado, 2 weeks ago, a 14-year-old raped by a law enforcement officer who convinced her to go to a park. She's a 14-year-old. She's going to listen to the police officer. So we know there's human error. We know. And the terrorists know that as well. So if they can start the prairie fire, guess what? They don't have to do anything else. Just because of the sinful nature of mankind, greed, whatever it may be, it'll take care of itself. And America will start to crumble. You know why? Because right now, we don't have a judicial system in place that holds people accountable. It won't hold that checkpoint accountable for raping your wife and your daughter. They'll get away with it somehow. Or they might be moved to another checkpoint, or do something else. When you've got thousands of checkpoints around America, then you've got thousands of problems. We like to think that people are honorable. We like to think that they will do the right thing, but history has shown us that that is not the case. And the terrorists know that as well. So now what we're doing is we're looking at the threads of America unraveling internally. It's like we're not starting on the edge. We're not starting out here with a piece of material. We're now infested the whole country full of termites, and it's just eating away. And once they get started, nobody has to do anything else. Managing that, putting that back into order is going to be a challenge for Americans. And I think Americans need to think about that and go, how do we do that? Now, President Trump comes in. I know he thinks like that. And I'm not pushing. I'm trying to be political here because I can't cross politics and art. I'm just putting on my patriot hat right now. And my art stuff has to stay over here. But the very first thing he said is the border's closed. That's it. And he knows that. And he's also made statements that every illegal immigrant that's here illegally is going to get out of the country. We've got to clean up. We're going to have to increase the good side of our agencies to go after these cells. But I'm going to tell you something, Tommy. Look at the generations that have come after the old Cold Warriors, like Ricky Prado and myself. We have these conversations too. They do not have the same moral standards. And I'm not putting this up on a pedestal, but they are not being bred to sacrifice. They are being bred to what is mine. I get 20 years, I retire. That's what I'm going after. Not what's good for the country. Now, this isn't all of them, but it's a majority of them. It's that whole mindset that exists in the CIA and the FBI and NSA and all those places. All the people that we hope would do the right thing will not do the right thing. I watch it every day. I watch it with child sex trafficking. People are supposed to be doing their job and not doing their job. We watch it on a lot of fronts, and they're not doing their job. The only time I actually see in our country the job getting done is when there are good, strong relationships, if we're talking law enforcement, at the local level and sometimes at the state level. And every now and then, you're going to get some people and they do it, and you think that everybody else is like them, and it's not. And even they have those discussions with us. How do I fight within my organization to do the right thing when it too is politicized? When somebody says, no, don't go arrest that guy because I'm going to run for mayor next month and it's going to make me look bad. So we definitely should be asking ourselves, what are we going to do about it? What is the solution? Because we're not going to sit here and just manage the problem. That's what this administration does now. They just manage the problem. No one can, no one can account millions or billions of dollars we're giving Ukraine for what? A direct threat to America? I don't think so. Or why did we leave billions of dollars that the Taliban could have? We evacuated Afghanistan and left Americans behind. Why? And yet our borders are open. And yet our veterans are suffering and homeless. And yet we have so many problems in our own country, and we're throwing money away instead of investing it in our own country. Why is that happening? Why are our gas prices at $6 and $7 a gallon? Because we have more liquid gold, so to speak, right here in America. And we could be turning that whole situation around. And yet we are suffering. This administration is causing us to suffer so they can play footsies with somebody else out there with agendas that nobody understands, that doesn't make any sense at all. So thus the car bomb. I think the car bomb is just an eye opener for us, Tommy. I think if we just brush it off as, oh, it was just a domestic terrorist, I think outside of the fact that you always have people that like to mimic that activity, we've also got very sophisticated bad guys, bad actors in the country that know how to do that 100 times a day, everywhere, and get away with it.
One, the the checkpoint. Let's say they don't get away with it. Let's say they're not moved around. Let's say they're all imprisoned, right? I always quote this book, Shadow Factory, the post 9/11 ultra secret NSA by James Bamford. I think it's James Bamford. Yeah, he recounts a story of several Marines in Afghanistan that raped this little girl, and they were. I mean, I think they were all hunted down and killed by terrorists. But it does happen. The guys in uniforms doing the thing. Let's say they're back home. What the checkpoints do, even if you get rid of all of them, you don't move them around. You imprison them all. You hang them. Whatever. You are now presenting an environment where bad can manifest. It's every building, you have fire extinguishers, you have fireproof insulation, you have whatever. Just because that's a fireproof building, maybe one of the buildings here isn't fireproof. Well, okay. But what happens when I don't know, there's a firestorm? What happens when somebody starts throwing Molotovs into every building? Most of them will put out, but what happens when one doesn't? You're presenting a scenario. And secondly, and I want to touch on this, is what Baz is talking about with programming. Poisoner in Chief about Sidney Gottlieb by, and I can never remember his first name, but Stephen Kinzer. I mean, everyone knows MK Ultra, Monarch, going back to the 50s, 60s. I mean, in the 70s, we were already moving from the chemical to putting these tiny like microchips and electrodes into the brains of Viet Cong. And it sounds like bullshit, and trying to like remote control them as if you were playing a game to get them. It didn't work, so they threw him out of a plane into the ocean and killed him. But that was 50 years ago. That was 50 years ago. What do you think's going on now? I mean, it can happen, and there will always be people poisoning the well and say, yeah, it is, and the reptilians are actually Princess Diana, and the people will always try to make it ridiculous. That's another part of running a dictatorship. But man, if you don't think this hasn't been pushed to the ultimate edge of what can happen, you're willfully ignorant. And it's lastly, I don't want to touch on, and I'll let you go if you want because we're coming up on an hour, is the kind of wheels within wheels. And I can keep talking, by the way, but it's somebody approaches you, hey brother, something needs to be done about this government. You walk into the library with the bomb, right? Turns out that guy, although he didn't look like it, he looked like me. And like you, I'm actually like 1/90th Native American. I think I was like Abenaki. You can tell by my glowing white skin. Let's say he comes to you, and it turns out he was ISIS. And so you now did what he wanted you to do, but he works for an external thing. Well, how about one layer higher? What if someone in the national security apparatus has monitored it, but they want to enact draconian control? Their hands are now clean. They don't have to worry about some false flag coming out because it was organic. It really was. Tommy was in touch with Abdul, and he got converted. And he was reading the Quran, and now, much like the first guy was tricked, the second guy unknowingly was allowed. They were monitoring from him from day one, but they let him do it because they want to enact something. They want the result will be the same, whether it's Bob walking in the library, whether it's Abdul getting his goal, or whether it's Jeff at the NSA. The end result will be the same. The hard arm of military will come down, and you will beg for it. And you'll have roadblocks. We'll beg for censorship. And again, like you said, all the right reasons. You'll have guys like me going, you know what, man? They blew that up, and it killed my sister-in-law, and so yeah, that's why I'm here with an M4, and we've got a metal detector, and we're looking for tannerite under your car. All the right reasons. You will have it, but the end result will be something dark. So it's not to take this entire thing into a dark place, but in a way there is a simplicity at the end of it. And it's if you're walking to the North Pole, and you're gonna have people along the way that are gonna try to help you, some that are gonna try to fuck you over, some that don't care, some that are insane. Ultimately, you need to keep looking at your compass and just go, I gotta keep going this way. I would say you bring it back in faith, praying to God. Maybe you're an atheist. Hey, that's your meditation. You know what's right. You know how to use your brain. If it's someone you've known for 30 years and they're talking to you, you can probably trust them. If it's someone who's just spontaneously come into your life and now conveniently they want to start talking to you about, where to get a belt fed, maybe something's up. But follow the inner compass, and it's not easy. And this room is a quiet room. You can hear lights. You can hear them hiss because I have so many sound panels. You got to get really quiet, and you can feel the little needle pushing you the right way. And that's God. That's the one. That's the I am that I am. There is peace and love to be found. And I always think of this one quote I saw. When I die, I want all of hell to rejoice because I'm out of the fight. And I think that's what we need to maybe embody. So, Baz, I'll let you wrap it up.
Well, thanks, Tommy. It's a couple things for the American people. If we're trying to figure out possibilities, just ask yourself common sense stuff. And you mentioned a word, Tommy, simple, and it is simple. When you look at things like the 9/11 report, then it was so redacted, or you look at the Kennedy reports, so redacted. You only redact stuff if you don't want people to see it. You're still complying with the law that it's the Freedom of Information Act giving it to you, but you're not giving it to them because you're giving them what you want them to see and what you don't want them to see. And so the question is, why do you not want me to see? That's it. Is it because it's going to harm me? It's never that. It's because it's going to lead to people that were actually responsible. So just use the common sense. And Tommy, much to your credit, what you're saying, at the end of the day, God brought us into this world and God will take us out of this. And for those people that do not have faith in God, I don't know how they make it every day, but the very breath that we have in our lungs belongs to him, and he can take it away anytime he wants. And it is that faith and the creator of this universe when he says, I have not given you a spirit of fear. And all the other things, my sister told me something one day, and it's so true. She was having a hard time. There was some struggles in her life, and she said, I'm pretty. I can hear God speaking to me. That still voice in my heart that you're talking about. And she said, it became very apparent to me when he said, if you do not have the strength to believe in me, then believe in my word. Believe what I have told. And sometimes I think that's it. Sometimes it's it, because, God is with us and he's around us and he's a part of many of us, not with everybody. But when we just can't get our head wrapped around his omnipotence and how big he is, and I think he understood that about humans because he created us and he said, I created you in my image. I think he was smart enough to realize that we would have times when we fall down and we needed to be able to pick ourselves up. And that's why he said, believe in my word. Trust what I've told you. And oftentimes in our lives, it's we're walking down that path, no matter how thirsty we get, how many times we fall down. If we're following somebody that we trust and they say, Tommy, trust me, get up. We're almost to the water hole. You believe their words because they're not silent. If they're silent and we're still following them, it doesn't give us enough hope. It doesn't resonate with our soul enough because that's not how we were created. But if we can believe in the words, we have hope. We have hope. So I would tell America very much the same thing. If you can't find it in your heart to have a relationship with God, understand how big he is because he's pretty big. I mean, it's mind-boggling how big he is. Then believe in his words always. And those words that I find are out of the Holy Scriptures in the Bible. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to me except through to the Father except through me. There's a lot to be said for that. But once you start peeling the layers, when you start studying it, you understand how amazing it really is, how amazing those words really are. And there are those words that resonate in our head. There are those words that we go back to constantly to give us hope. The same as we did with Constitution. We go, we the people. When we repeat those words, the people, it inspires us because we know where those words came from. We know the history and the power behind those words. So I think that it's something to be looked at in our country. And God has said, as in the days of Moses, I shall be with you. Those are his words. Those are his promises. And I think we hold on to that as a country. As a country that was found under Judeo-Christian principles from the very beginning. And we will get through. We will always get through. It may be a little bumpy. We may have worse battles to fight, but there will be enough of us, just like only 3% of the colonists that did what they had to do so that you and I share our freedom that we have today with other Americans. Well, so be it. I know you and I will be part of the next 3%. And that's all it will take and everything because we believe. And we go through those battles, we go through those times for as long as we are on this earth, we will never, ever, ever give up our values as Americans, ever. Even if we are the last ones standing, so be it.
Be still and know that I am God. And on a much less formal and beautiful analogy, as someone that was a believer for, I don't know, probably the first 14 years of my life, and then was pretty hardcore atheist for the next 16, and now have come back to God. I can tell you, I wanted to believe in God, but I just couldn't bring myself to. I just didn't believe it. But even my other atheist friends, we'd all say, like, I hope there's a God, but we would all agree, like, these are still good guidelines to follow, whether or not you believe in him. Is, don't cheat, don't steal, don't kill. It's like, hey man, you don't got to believe in him. You can hate the United States, but you could probably go, yeah, I mean, I think everyone probably should have the freedom of speech. It's okay to just go, I don't believe in it, but man, Yeah, the words are true. And to bring it down even lower, I'll use this analogy. In college, I would I would leave my debit card at home when I would go out to the bars, bring like $40. And I'd go, because I know in 3 hours, you're gonna truly believe that the best decision is to buy $100 of shots for you and your friends. And you're not gonna believe, even if I write it on my phone, don't spend money, you're gonna look at it and go, that's bullshit. I would go, you know what? All right, I'm just gonna leave it at home. And I'd be at the bar and I'd be like, I can't believe I left it at home. I can't buy it. And part of me, I'd be like, I know what sober Tommy's thinking, but that's stupid. But and then finally I'd be like, it's at home. I can't get home. I don't want to leave the party. So I guess there's maybe some truth to it. And I'd always wake up and I'd go, thank you, God, because I don't have that money. So on a much more simplistic analogy, if you don't truly feel it in your heart, much like I didn't feel that I shouldn't be buying shots, listen to the word. At the very least, you can do that. You can go, okay, yeah, I do believe I'll follow that. But we'll wrap it up. Guys, please go into the description. Send me Baz, if you could send me a link to the coffee, and I'll update the description for episodes with you. And lastly, I've been meaning to do this. So a person that's become a friend of mine actually discovered me through an episode with you because she loves you. And she's like, and I found you. And I was like, oh, cool. And she was like, yeah. And at first I was like, who's this kind of who's this cocky, angsty, shithead teenager? And I was like, well, that's all right. I'll take it. And she was like, but I've come to love your show. And she's like, and she actually showed me her Spotify thing. She's like, I listen to you more than anyone. So I was like, awesome. Her name's Amberly. Baz, could you give her a shout out? Because she loves you and she is the embodiment of peace and love.
Yeah, who is this again, Tommy?
Amberly.
Yeah, yeah. Send her my information. Have her get in touch with you. I'd love to.
All right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's the sweetest woman in the world. And yeah, she's like, I love Baz because he's just it's the embodiment of courage and morality. And she's like, and I found you. And at first I hated you. And I was like, oh. She's like, some cocky jock frat boy. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I've come to love you. And I was like, oh God, I hope that's not what I give off. But yeah, so no, Amberly loves you, and I just wanted to let you know that. But for now, Mr. Bazzel Baz, let's wrap this up. And as always, man, I love you and I'm grateful for you coming into my life.
Thanks, Tommy. God bless you, buddy. Always.
Thank you, sir. Guys, please go into the description. Baz will send me the coffee link and I'll put that there as well. And until next time, thank you so much, Baz. God bless everybody.